Hello, I'm Svitek and welcome to my weekly vlog. This is episode 4 and my intent with this vlog is not necessarily for me to just kind of be self-serving, but hopefully take you on my creative journey and talk about the lessons I extract from them, and also just to identify that, I teach a lot of these various lessons about how creatives can overcome obstacles, whether they be through mastering mental fortitude or actual tips and so forth. And in the spirit of that, I feel it's only right that I also share my journey, so that way you kind of see why I'm essentially qualified to talk about the things that I talk about. And again, that also to let you know that I have my struggles too and whatnot, and kind of create that connection, that bond. So that's the intent of me doing this. So a large portion of what I did last week, we finally finished up writing the final draft, if you will, of the script, the feature film that I've been working on with Taylor Gates, in terms of my writing partner, but obviously, there's cast members and so forth that are involved. And though I say the final draft, obviously there's going to be minor tweaks in terms of the dialogue and here and there. But luckily, we quote unquote locked the script, which means it's in pre-production. So last week, a lot of what I did was spend time figuring out the actor's schedule and making things work and planning it out, what made the most sense. Luckily, I had my friend Anthony Becerra, who's also involved in the movie, help out. And at first, it's a pretty daunting task to essentially try to produce a feature film, especially when I've made films before, but certainly feature films, I've only worked on realistically one, and I haven't done it in quite a while. And that was where we had a lot more resources, and I had a lot of other producers as well. So it wasn't just financial resources, it was manpower. And this is really just kind of a lot falls on me, and a lot falls on a very, very small and dedicated group of people that are acting as actors and producers. But I have to kind of steer the ship. And so through the process, I essentially took down everyone's schedules and then kind of had to look and break down the script of, okay, which scenes can we film when based on people's availability. And that's a tough thing because especially with the crossover, like the stuff that's individual or two people, that's easy. It's really a matter of the times when there's like 4 characters all in one scene that becomes problematic. And especially you're just trying to figure out the schedule, but you're also trying to figure out the locations as well. So, when you don't have those locked down, it's a little tough because sometimes the location dictates the scheduling and so forth. So there's a lot that went into it. But overall, what we did was we wrote down everyone's availability. When you lock a script, each scene gets numbered. We created note cards of the various scenes and the actors that would need to be on it. And I'm a very visual person, so we spread everything out on the floor. And we had essentially a batch of, okay, here's the scenes that need to be put somewhere, and then we had the calendar, if you will. And so we're like, okay, well, this date we can't have character 2 or 3. Okay, so what are all the scenes we can do with character 1 and 5? Okay, get me all those scenes and we'll put them here. And so you kind of go through this until you figure out the right combination. Now, movie making is as such that, of course, when I sent out the preliminary schedule, people's schedules had kind of shifted. As it may be, no one's fault, but then you kind of have to essentially go back to the drawing board. But luckily, because we've done the bulk of the work, it became that much, I wouldn't say easier, but at least now we had the right tools to kind of reshuffle and whatever else. And, we didn't have to put in the man hours to have that organizational system. It was more of a matter of creatively figuring out how to make things work. And when I talk about mastering mental fortitude, like even in this early part of the process, it's been quite a journey. And if I wasn't mentally tough, there's already some things that have happened that I know many people would already stress out about. I don't want to call out Anthony in some sense, but for him, this process is very new, and there was a couple of things that came up. He was like, "How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with this?" Like, okay, calm down. It's okay, and I get it because he's in the trenches and he's got to kind of figure it out. And sometimes it is easier to be that person overlooking with a bird's eye view of something. Like, okay, here's how we do it. So, I mean, case in point, there was a thing that came up with one of the actors. And I knew it could be solved for, but I was like, crap, how do I do this? And luckily, I called one of our other producers, Ian Kaiser, and then he gave me a simple solution. I was like, okay, great. I said, thank you, hung up immediately, and then went to work on solving that problem with the suggestions that he made. So all in all, it's great that I can remain calm under pressure for most of this, but it's also great when you do have multiple people to collaborate with, because you can kind of spread the problem solving skills. We were also looking at places to shoot location wise, right? That was a big thing. And we were looking at apartments. There's two characters whose apartments we have to go to, and a place like Gigster is a fantastic place, but usually there's a 7 p.m. cutoff. So we had to come up with an alternative, because a lot of the stuff that we were aiming to shoot was going to be done at night. And now, granted, you could black out the windows and things like that, but especially for one of the characters, he's supposed to be this very affluent person. So we wanted like a downtown LA vibe where he has like windows, right? Big like glass panes, and you could see out into the city, and that just wasn't going to work if we blacked out the windows, because we couldn't shoot out the windows. And then we thought about the time shift in terms of daylight savings time that's coming up, where we're moving clocks back, and so therefore sundown happens a little bit earlier. So we're like, okay, can we pull this off if there's sundown at 5 p.m.? Can we shoot that portion of what we need very quickly? And it was just too many things we didn't want to deal with, so we instead went with another route. I'm glad kind of we were able to problem solve there, and kudos to Taylor Gates, because I talked to her and I was like, what do you think about this apartment? What do you think about this apartment? So we were able to make it come together, even though through Gigster, the apartments that we saw were like fantastic. The ones that we're getting, a little bit more production work needs to be done on them, but that's okay. It'll be fun, and we have the time to do it, and we'll be able to shoot at night. So I'm looking forward to that. The other thing, like going back to the idea of scheduling, one of the things when I think about it, I needed to problem solve was I mentioned like it's going to be tough to get 4 people all at the same time, and sometimes we couldn't do that. And I'm thankful enough that I have the skills essentially to know, okay, you know what? I know they have to all be in the same scene together. How do we fake a master where it appears that they're all in a scene together? And then essentially we just shoot out close-ups and mediums of other people. And what we'll do is we'll cheat in the sense that we'll see the shoulder of somebody, the character that's supposed to be in that scene, and we'll be on the medium of the other actor and so forth. So it'll look like they're all in the same scene together, but they're not going to be. At least for certain portions. So I'm glad that I have the experience of having done that and knowing how to put that together, which isn't really that hard. Ultimately, like, you just kind of really need someone's shoulder or arm or something like that, just or hair. And for the most part, it's going to be blurry anyway. So as long as it's very similar and you have the same clothes, then it appears like they're in the scene. And the harder parts is the wide shot. We'll have to kind of fake those in the sense that you won't, it'll be one of those where you have to kind of go a little bit further out than perhaps you'd like, and someone's going to have to be kind of angled in such a way where you don't see their face, and we'll see. But I'm confident. I think it'll work out, and I'm excited to pull off some movie magic, as they say. The other part of it, with this is that I have to be very much thinking about how to shoot it. Like, we're very ambitious with the number of pages that we're shooting in any particular moment, and my goal is to shoot as real time as possible. So meaning what you see is what you get. So if it's a 5-minute scene, we try to shoot it out in 10, 15 minutes. A couple of angles, you have 2 cameras running at the same time, run through it. If someone flubs, you take it back, start there, boom. They finish out the scene, you do a different angle. After that, you get a couple of quick inserts that you want, very specific shots, but for the most part, yeah, and I kind of like that. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is I loved Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew, which is a book based on the making of his very first movie called El Mariachi, which he made for $7,000. And the reason he was able to make that for a feature film for $7,000 was he literally just shot the shots that he needed. We're actually shooting more than that, but even under our constraints, we're shooting more than he did. He would literally just, if someone needed to throw a punch, he knew exactly the shot that he would need. He'd throw that punch and boom, moving on. If he needed one, he knew exactly the cuts that he was going to make in terms of the dialogue, so he would literally just shoot someone's dialogue very specifically. Like if he knew that he was going to start on a wide for the start of the conversation, he would just get that wide, get that line of dialogue, boom, he knew he was going to cut into, let's say, a medium of character A. He would get a medium of character A, and then he would zoom in for close-ups for the lines 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then he knew he was going to go wide out again for line 7, 8, 9. Boom, got that, reversed it to character 2. He literally shot just what he needed to shoot. And what's kind of cool is you can watch online. He does these 10-minute film schools, and you can look it up on YouTube, just 10-minute film school, Robert Rodriguez, El Mariachi, and he does it for other movies as well. But in this instance in particular, there was an action chase scene where his main actor threw his guitar case, and unfortunately it didn't work out. Well, he was like, well, I'm not going to redo that entire shot just because the guitar case didn't go where it was supposed to go. I'll just pick it up from the guitar case landing where it needs to go. I'm not going to throw out the other part of that shot, which I know looks good. And that's just fascinating to me. And especially, like, what's really fascinating about that is he was shooting on film. So it's not like he had playback, with modern technology in terms of digital, with, whether it be GoPros or the Red camera, or even just like any standard smartphone, you can check back the shot, right? And know what you have. But him, he had to know exactly and trust that what that was, because it's not like he could have gotten the film developed and been, he just needed to know. It's very fascinating. So that's kind of what we're trying to pull off. I've also been talking a lot about my novel, and so I wanted to update you there. There's not a lot to update you necessarily, simply because I'm still waiting on feedback from people, but it seems to be people really like the second, the last 2/3 of the book. The first third drags a little bit, so I still got to figure that out, because one of my worries is that the first third of the book really sets up the emotional stakes that then come to play in the last 2/3. So we'll see how I pull that off, but I'm talking with my editor about how to achieve that. We know we need to cut out 15,000 words, so maybe that's the way to do it. Thankfully, my friend Tammy Berg, she sent me this course for fiction writing, novel writing specifically, and so I haven't yet started it, but I'm gonna start that. It's like a 24 lessons course, if you will. It's all online, very good price too. So I'll link to that below for anyone's interested. I have no affiliate. It's not like I get any kickback if you sign up for them, but they're doing this for like up until mid-October. I believe they're doing a very much discounted price. So I got the course for $25. Normally it's like a $400 thing. So I said $25. That's cheap, so why not? I'm trying to be novelist, so I should, it's not that I've not taken it seriously. I've always been willing to learn, and this is just kind of the next phase of it, right? So for $25, let me take this course and see what I get out of it. I'm sure there's going to be something I gain from it. So I'm excited to get into that. There was this great speech I heard recently about encouragement versus discouragement. And taking kind of the start of it, the jumping off point for the speech was, we all want to build relationships, human relationships, deep, powerful, meaningful relationships. And we want to succeed in our lives. Well, in order to build those relationships, we need to encourage one another. And too many of us discourage each other. And that can come in the form of being truthful. Like, are you sure this is a good idea? And I'm not really doing it justice. I'll link to that as well. It is a sermon, so there is religious talk, but even if you're not religious, I think you can extrapolate something from it. And if you are religious, then I think a lot of it will resonate with you. But it's just this interesting notion that even when you think you're being beneficial by being brutally honest, they call that tough love, eventually you're going to drive people away. Interestingly enough, one of the points that was brought up was about how parents, sometimes they discourage kids, again, with the notion of be realistic. Don't, you can't be an actor, you can't be a sports player, be realistic. And discourage someone enough times, they go away from you, right? So the notion of creating these human emotions, like if you're constantly discouraging someone, eventually you're going to drive them away. But if you're encouraging somebody, then of course they're going to want you around. Now, there's a fine balance between just allowing someone to do whatever they want. But yeah, for the most part, and yeah, it's something that I think for the most part I've been pretty good about. And why I have the deep, meaningful relationships that I have is because I do encourage people for the most part. And, especially now I realize about myself that I love helping artists. And so in order to help artists, I have to encourage them, inspire them, and not only that, give them ways to do that. So that's, I think, the cool part in terms of what I get to do is I get to encourage people all day, every day. So I'm very fascinated by that notion. And, one of the things that was also brought up is this notion that just because you encourage somebody else, it's that age-old thing. Like, just because someone else rises doesn't mean you don't rise with them. The more you actually encourage somebody else, it actually comes back to you in the same way. So, root for other people's successes, essentially, and success will come your way as well. That's the cool part. One of the things last week, I got a chance to interview my friend Ken Knapp. That interview is up, and I've just been thinking a lot about it throughout the week. And he's just such a great guy, very humble, and I encourage you to check out that interview. There's just a lot that I gained, and he's a very wise guy, knows digital and stuff like that. Like, he doesn't get the due credit that he deserves, and which is why I want to kind of honor that. The last thing I'll kind of touch upon, there's plenty of other stuff I could talk about, but the last thing I'll talk about is, unfortunately, with the scheduling of the movie, things took a lot longer, so I didn't get to do as much as I wanted last week. I still got done what I needed to get done, but, I have to very much I've been working on this video, this kind of fun little video that I shot with my cousin while I was in Slovakia, and unfortunately I haven't been able to devote as much time as I'd like into it, so I still owe that to my cousin. I talked about it a couple weeks ago, but just the inherent value that and joy it'll bring to them of me doing this, it will be worth it to me. And so I'm gonna try to find time this week to continue working on it. Ideally I'll finish, but if not, I'll continue working on it. Anyway, that's kind of the long and short of a lot of these things. Hopefully there was some takeaway with this. By all means, comment below if you have any questions about any of the things that I talked about. If there's any topics you'd like me to talk about, I encourage you to write those down as well. That way I can touch upon them. And feel free to continue checking back to my work, whether it's the podcast, which talks about mastering mental fortitude. I also do some quick tips that are more practical. And also, because I love movies so much, I do my quick reviews whenever I get to see a movie. So yeah, that's it for me for this week, and bye.